Margie here. Nearly 2,500 years ago, Hippocrates said that all disease begins in the gut. Well, today we're exploring the gut because there's such a relationship between our gut, our bone health, our happiness, our overall health, and we have a very special guest, Dr. Tom O'Brien. And Dr. Tom is a recognized world expert on gluten, autoimmunity, and brain health, and his products have hugely impacted my family. Wait till you hear the story. Dr. Tom is the founder of thedoctor.com and the author of two best-selling books. The first, The Autoimmune Fix, which outlines the step-by-step development of degenerative diseases and offers the tools to identify a disease process years before the symptoms are obvious. His second book, You Can Fix Your Brain, just 1 hour a week to the best memory, productivity, and sleep you've ever had, is the handbook for anyone worried about brain health. And that's all of us, right? Dr. Tom holds teaching faculty positions with the Institute for Functional Medicine and the National University of Health Sciences, and has trained and certified tens of thousands of practitioners around the world in advanced understanding of the impact of wheat sensitivity and the development of autoimmune diseases. This interview was originally done for the Happiness Challenge, but I got so much positive feedback, and it has such what he talks about really has a tremendous impact on bone health. And what I've seen in my practice is that gluten and our gut can completely, when we take care of these things, it's amazing what happens to our bones. There's such a relationship. So I wanted to share this with this community, and there's so many takeaways and amazing nuggets. So stay tuned. Welcome, Dr. Tom. I can't even tell you how excited I am to be having this interview with you because we're talking about happiness. And one of the things that I teach is gratitude. And you are one person that I am so grateful for on so many levels. And we'll get into that in the interview. But you've truly, by how you've taught me about so many things, as well as the products you've created, completely changed really the life of my husband and our family life. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I can't wait to really spread your information to people because there's such a relationship between the gut and all the things that you teach and our happiness. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a great greeting. Thank you. Makes my day.
It's so true, though. And all day I was thinking how happy I am to have the ability to tell you that. And we'll get into it later because it's not a minor thing. It's really huge. So all your work has paid off for so many people and so much for my family. So let's just get started. So many people have heard the term leaky gut and leaky brain, but can you just explain to people what those are and what that means?
Sure. When we are, I think for this conversation, our interest is in brain function and the attitude that we have in life, our happiness quotient, if you will. Do we see the glass half empty or half full? Those types, that arena of discussion. And we know that all of the brain function problems, whether it's depression or anxiety or schizophrenia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, all of them are imbalances of too much inflammation in the brain. There's too much fire in the brain. And we know, as far as I know, practically every disease is a disease of inflammation at the cellular level. The cell is always on fire. The topic is it a brain cell you want to talk about or a kidney cell? Is it a skin cell or a hormone producing cell? And is it gasoline or kerosene? But it's always a fire. And so when we're looking at what triggers inflammation in the brain, what triggers fire in the brain, we have to look at where's the gasoline coming from causing the fire in the brain. And so from that perspective, a primary 101 topic that needs to be addressed is your gut. that we've heard it called the second brain. And I think in reality, it actually is the first brain, because for every one message from the brain going down telling the gut what to do, there are 9 messages from the gut going up telling the brain what to do. So who's running the ship here? And it's the environment of the gut, the microbiome in the gut, the bacteria in the gut. Many of us have heard that there's 10 times more cells of bacteria in our bodies than all the human cells put together, 10 times more. And that these bacterial cells have 100 to 150 times more genes than the human genome. And this is why, we all thought that when the human genome was fully identified, and that happened right around the turn of the century, 2001, 2002, we thought it was going to conquer disease. And it didn't take long to realize that wasn't the case. And this is why. It's because genes determine function. Think of all of your genes like dimmer switches, and so it's not an on-off switch. If you've got the Alzheimer's gene, it doesn't mean you're getting Alzheimer's. It means that you're vulnerable to Alzheimer's. If you've got the BRCA gene, it doesn't mean you're getting breast cancer. It means you're vulnerable to getting breast cancer. If you have a family history of depression, it doesn't mean you're going to get depression. But if you're carrying the same genes, it means you're vulnerable to developing depression. So the question is, what human genes get turned on and which ones get turned off? And are they turned on full force, or is that dimmer switch just bumped a little bit? So what's controlling the dimmer switch of all of our genes? And it's the microbiome, it's the bacterial genes. When you learn that 1/3 of all of the small molecules in the bloodstream at any one time, 1/3 of all of those molecules are the exhaust from the bacteria in your gut. And it's called the metabolites. That's the geek term, but it's the exhaust. And those metabolites go to your brain, they go to your eyes, they go to your heart, they go to your kidneys, they go to your liver, and they turn on the genes of the brain. They turn on or off the genes of the brain. They turn on or off the genes of the eyes, on or off the genes of your skin, on or off the genes of your liver. And it's really a dimmer switch. It's not on off, it's a dimmer switch. Turn on a little bit, turn it on a lot. When we understand that whole concept, I'm sorry this is so geeky, but it's really important. And I hope
Absolutely.
I hope you all will go back and listen to this again so that you can really wrestle with this idea. And any information you get, if you review it within 24 hours and then review it again once more within 72 hours, it goes into long-term memory. And so that's what I tell doctors all the time on stage. There's so much information here today. Make sure you review this within 24 hours. And then once again, you can just review a 4-hour lecture in 15 minutes. Just go, yeah. Oh, that's right. They did. Oh, yeah. And you don't have to take 4 hours. Just review so that you remind yourself. And then once more in 72 hours, you've got it. So that's what you do with this concept, because this is the primary concept of where disease comes from. When you understand that it's the microbiome of your gut, the metabolites, the exhaust of that microbiome that gets into the bloodstream, 1/3 of all the molecules in the bloodstream are this exhaust, and these are the messengers that actually control your genes, the human genes. These are the messengers that turn the dimmer switch up for more inflammation in your brain, or turn the dimmer switch down for less inflammation in your brain. These are the messengers. What's going on in your gut. That's why thousands of years ago, Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut. And that's why just this year, Professor Alessio Fasano, the chair of pediatric gastroenterology at Harvard, and the chair of the mucosal immunology department at Harvard, and the chair of the celiac department at Harvard. This guy is unbelievable what he's doing. His paper came out this year that said all disease begins in the leaky gut. because this is the primary mechanism. You want more happiness in life, you need to have a happy brain. You can't have a brain on fire and then cover it up with some icing that says happy. That's not going to work, right? You put nice
Absolutely.
you put nice icing on a bad cake. You take a bite of the cake. At first, you get teased by it's nice icing, but that's oh, oh. So we want to reduce the inflammation in the brain. So
That-
when we understand that basic concept, and that's a 101 concept that takes a PhD to understand, right? But it's a basic concept that we have to start with. And when you understand that, then the question, what is a leaky gut, becomes so important. So I needed to do that first so that everyone would understand this is not, yeah, whatever, leaky gut. My gut doesn't leak, my gut's fine. You can write it off if you don't understand the critical importance. All disease begins in the leaky gut. So now let's talk about what is a leaky gut.
Great. And I just want to say one thing, and I think it's so important because so many people don't get that. They're like, oh, my stomach's fine. I don't have any issues. And they don't put the two together, that it's not that they're having a cough. It's not that they're having issues with their memory. It's all related to the gut. So I think you really did a great job of explaining that. And I think it's such an important concept. So thank you for clarifying that. So yeah, let's go into leaky gut now. Sure.
And you're right. You're right. The science is really clear. For every one person that has gut symptoms, there are 8 that don't when they've got problems in their gut, but they don't feel anything in their gut. The ratio is 8-1. They've got brain symptoms, or they've got vision symptoms, or they've got skin symptoms, acne, psoriasis, or they've got alopecia, they're losing their hair, or they've got thyroid symptoms. No gut symptoms, but it's what's going on in the gut that is the trigger for the inflammation that's turned on the genes in your thyroid or your skin or your hair follicles or wherever it is. So that's why this is so important. Mrs. Patient, every cell in your body regenerates. You have an entire new body every 7 years, except your teeth. Your teeth don't, but every other cell regenerates. Some cells are really quick, like the inside of your guts every couple days. Some cells are slow. Brain cells, bone cells are slower, but they all regenerate. So the question is, are you regenerating healthier cells or less healthy cells? And that's the goal, to build a stronger, healthier you. So the inside lining of your gut, fastest growing cells in the body. Your digestive tract is a tube. Starts at the mouth, goes to the other end. If you vision a donut, if you could take one donut and stretch out a donut, one big, long donut, swallow food, and look down the tube, that's your digestive tract. The food is in the tube. It's not in the body. It's in the tube. And it's got to go through the walls of the donut to get into the bloodstream. Then your body uses the food that you eat to make new bone cells and brain cells and skin cells and all of that. But if we understand that the food is in the tube, which starts at the mouth and goes to the other end, well, how does it get through the walls of the tube? The inside of that tube is lined with cheesecloth. So only really small molecules can get through the cheesecloth into the bloodstream. That's why your digestive tract is 20 feet long, because it takes a lot longer to break down prime rib than it does a banana. Right? And so your digestive enzymes act as scissors. So think of proteins like a pearl necklace. The acid in your stomach undoes the clasp of the pearl necklace. Now you have a string of pearls. Your digestive enzymes act as scissors. Cut it in half. Cut it again. Cut it again. Snip, 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 until you snip that protein down to each pearl of the pearl necklace, called an amino acid. And those amino acids are small enough to go right through the cheesecloth and get into the bloodstream. And that's how we get our nutrients to make new cells through the whole body. But when you get tears in the cheesecloth, that's what the leaky gut is. You get tears in the cheesecloth, and the geek term for that is intestinal permeability. when you get tears in the cheesecloth, now the molecules of food that are going down the digestive tract, snip, snip, being snipped by our enzymes, now a bigger molecule of food can get through the tears in the cheesecloth before it should be able to get into the bloodstream. That's called a macromolecule, a big molecule. And that gets through the bloodstream. And your immune system says, whoa, what's this? This is not good for me. I better fight this. Now you make antibodies to tomatoes or to banana or to chicken or to broccoli or to rhubarb or to beef. It doesn't matter what the food is. If you have tears in the cheesecloth and these bigger molecules get through early before they've been snipped small enough, your immune system trying to protect you is going to fight those. Then you go to a doctor who does a 90 food blood test on you to see if you're sensitive to any foods, and you're sensitive to 20, 25 different foods. And you say, oh my God, that's everything I eat. Well, of course it is. Your immune system's trying to protect you because you got tears in the cheesecloth. You've got intestinal permeability. So you get those foods out of the diet, you heal the intestinal permeability, you wait 6 months, test again. Now you're sensitive to 2 foods, maybe 3. Those are the foods you stay away from. And then you should be much better. Because these macromolecules, when they get in the bloodstream and your immune system starts fighting them, that is the trigger for so much of the inflammation that we have in our bodies. And the inflammation, it puts your skin on fire. It puts your brain on fire. It puts your kidneys on fire. Wherever the weak link is, you pull at a chain, it always breaks at the weakest link. It's at one end, the middle, the other end, your heart, your brain, your liver. Wherever the weak link is, that's where it's going to break. So don't pull on the chain so hard. Well, wait a minute. How do I not pull on the chain? Reduce the inflammation. How do I reduce the inflammation? $1 million question. And if there's only one thing you do in life to focus on, it's living an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. That's where happiness would come from on an organic level, on a body function level, is reducing the inflammation in the body. That is so critically important for all of us.
And that's such a great way. I love how you take very complex, these are not easy concepts, and you really put them into bite-sized pieces that we can digest. So thank you for doing that. What I have seen, because it's true, when you're inflamed, yes, you can try to be happy and do a lot of the happiness practices, and it will make you happier, but get to the root cause. Once your health is better, it's so much easier. It's such an important part of being happy. But interestingly, some of what you've, I think, brought to the world was how critical gluten is. So maybe we could just talk about that, because years ago, was it 7 years ago you had the gluten summit?
That was correct, 7 years ago.
Yeah, I listened to that, and I have to tell you, because you went to Israel, you went all over the place to interview these amazing people. So I probably listened to that 5 times. I just couldn't absorb enough of it because it was fascinating, and it was just amazing what you had put together. But since that time, and I'll tell you later about my husband's story, but I have seen that gluten is one thing that really, really is a cause of so many issues. And I've seen people, when they realize that that's a trigger, whatever it started from, but whenever the body's reacting to gluten or whatever, it's just, the body's on fire. And
Yes.
so maybe you can just, because I know when people eliminate that, it's really, maybe you know what, I'm going to tell you my husband's story real quick, because it all ties together. So I had listened like crazy to your gluten summit. So I had, known all about the gluten from all these great experts. And anyway, my husband's an OBGYN, and out of the blue, he was living in labor and delivery a lot, sleeping there, and they were doing construction. But out of the blue, he got this cough. Such a bad cough that he could barely speak. Went to doctor after doctor, and he's a conventional, he was into conventional medicine, and they just put him on one antibiotic, the next antibiotic, the next antibiotic. Anyway, as time went on, nothing helped. Losing weight, sweating through 3 shirts a night, still functioning, but at a very reduced level. Every night fevers. Anyway, nobody can figure out the last thing. And he's gone to doctors in New York City, the best of the best. And at the end, they just said, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. And so then at that point, I said, look, I'm willing to help you. And I'm thinking in my head, he's been on so many antibiotics. Let's get him tested for gluten. And sure enough, he had IgG antibodies to gluten. So we started getting rid of that and then upping all of his nutrients and energy work. And anyway, he was fine after that. Fine until inadvertently exposed to gluten. And so then what would happen when he had inadvertently exposed to gluten, it would take 2 months to get better because that's how his body reacted. And his body always reacted with the same thing. Anyway, that's when you came along, and that, well, prior to that, we had been using, when we had been using your E3, it wasn't called that at the time, it was called Glutenza, but your E3 Advanced, which I have here because it's one of my favorites. So that really helped when we go out to dinner, when we use anything, because that blocks 98% of the gluten. So that was huge. And you just don't know when you're out, when someone is so sensitive. So it was incredibly helpful. But then we're in Akron, Ohio, and this happened probably twice where it took 2 months to get better. And I see him eating carrot cake, and my sister-in-law, that's where she lives, and she bought all this gluten-free food, and she said the woman at the store has gluten issues herself, so she made sure. And I see him eating carrot cake, and I said, oh, is that gluten-free? And she said, oh, it's made of spelt. I said, what do you mean? That's not gluten-free. She said, oh, the woman said she has no issues with that. I said, no, but luckily I travel with your other amazing product, your GS Restore Immune, the Colostrum. And so prior to that, though, I had written to you and asked you, is there anything we can do? Is there anything we can do about if an inadvertent exposure to gluten? And you sent me a protocol. And I thought, no one knows anything. And you're giving me a protocol of high dose D, the colostrum, and also low dose naltrexone. We never needed to use the low dose naltrexone, but the protocol worked. And so he didn't have any reaction, and he certainly had gluten, which was amazing because, as I said, it had been 2 months. So it was just so unbelievable. And that's why I am so grateful, because these products are amazing. And so then what happened was that pay it forward. So he's an OBGYN and he sees patients all the time. So now anytime he can't figure out someone has crazy symptoms, he says, the first thing he says is, you know what, let's start with removing gluten. And over the years now, so many people, a lot of times his people come back once a year. They come in for their annual checkup, and a year later they come in and they're, you know what? Whatever, that completely changed my life. And even people with autoimmune, your book, that's his first line of defense, your autoimmune fix, which is such a wonderful book. So when he can't figure out, or someone says about their son and no one can figure it out, he's like, why don't you start with this book and start with gluten? And I can't even tell you how many people's lives you've changed in my family, as well as people that we work with. So I can only imagine around the world the big impact you're having. So,
you're reminding me, in 2014, about 6 months after the Gluten Summit had come out, I was in Seattle. I gave a talk in Seattle, and on Saturday, and then on Sunday was having brunch on an outdoor patio with my friend, Dr. David, and who lives there. And we're sitting having lunch, and there was a couple with a teenage girl, couple tables over, and out of my eye, I would see they would kept looking like this, looking at me. And I just knew, I kind of had a sense. And when they got up to leave, they came walking over, and the woman said, "Are you Dr. Tom?" And I said, "Yes." She started crying,
oh,
and her husband was holding her. And she said, "Our daughter was dying." Here's this lovely 14-year-old girl there. And from the age of 3, she was diagnosed with idiopathic juvenile arthritis. Idiopathic means we don't know why you've got it. And this poor little girl couldn't walk. And they tried everything. They finally put her on steroids, and steroids dropped the pain down so she could function. But steroids stunt growth. And this little girl had a failure to thrive. And so she was the shortest girl in the class and all that. And they'd on occasion tried to get her off steroids, and nothing would work. and her pain would come back right away. And this went on for 10 years.
Mm.
10 years of suppressed growth and all of the complications. It's not just height and weight, it's your brain, it's your kidneys, it's your whole body. And she said, we heard your summit, the gluten summit. We decided that day just to stop with wheat. And our daughter's pain was gone in 2 weeks and it's never come back. And here she is now a year later or so, and just all smiling. And I said, all right, girl, give me 5. And this
Oh,
girl gives me 5. I said, way to go. And,
oh, that must have
but
made you feel so good because I mean, on my husband's 60th birthday, he turned around and similar situation because really all the doctors, everyone had sort of given up on him and just said there's nothing that can be done. And he had molecular mimicry and then the gluten issue. And so he looks at me and he says, thank you for saving my life. I didn't think I would live to 60. And I
wow.
never realized, in my mind, I'm such an optimistic person. I never felt
Yeah.
that was, it was that dire. But when he said that, I just burst out in tears. But it's the power of your work and how critical, not, gluten or whatever you're sensitive to, but people don't see it. And none of the doctors afterwards, they were so surprised, like, oh, I guess your wife was right. I'm thinking,
Yeah, they're just not trained to think this way. So this thing about gluten, earlier I mentioned Professor Alessio Fasano at Harvard, and it was him and his team in 1997 that identified the protein that causes intestinal permeability or the leaky gut. They identified it, and he's been studying this now for over 20 years. We think he'll get the Nobel Prize one day
oh, I hope
because
so.
this affects millions and millions of people. And this paper that he just published in January, All Disease Begins in the Leaky Gut, he talks about there are 2 things that are known to trigger leaky gut every time. One is bacteria, too much bacteria in the small intestine called LPS. That stands for lipopolysaccharides. It's just gram-negative bacteria. That'll cause a leaky gut. And 2, gluten. And now we know, I've got 5 studies in my all-day course on this. I have an online all-day course called certifiedglutenpractitioner.com. I have 5 studies in there that every human gets tears in the cheesecloth within 5 minutes of any wheat exposure coming out of the stomach into the small intestine. Every human, every time. And as we said in the beginning, most people don't feel it. It's an 8 to 1. You just don't feel when it's happening, but you tear the cheesecloth every single time, every human. Well, I feel fine when I eat my pizza. Well, yeah, but your brain's going, isn't it? Well, I didn't remember where my keys were for this morning. That may be the manifestation, right? Or it's your skin, or it's your hair, or it's your gallbladder, or it's your joints. So the really way to know about this is that there's a blood test now that's extremely accurate. Extremely accurate. You even can do the finger prick version of the blood test that's come out. Extremely accurate. It's called the wheat zoomer because you zoom in on the problem. And anybody can download the information on my website, the doctor.com. Just don't spell the word doctor out. Download the information for the wheat zoomer, take it to your doctor and say, please order this test for me. And if they won't, you can order it on my website and we'll send it to you, the finger prick. But I'd much prefer your doctor order it because it's going to drop their jaw when they see the results, when you work with them on that. But every human, every time, gets tears in the cheesecloth. Now, for full disclosure, Dr. Fasano has shown us that it's called transient intestinal permeability, meaning that you tear the cheesecloth, but it heals. Fastest growing cells in the body, the inside lining of the gut. You have a sandwich for lunch, you tear the cheesecloth, but it heals. You have pasta for dinner, you tear the cheesecloth and it heals. Croutons on your salad, tear the cheesecloth, but it heals. A cookie, tear the cheesecloth, but it heals. Day after week after month after year until one day, you don't heal anymore. Now you've got the leaky gut. That's called loss of oral tolerance. That happens when you're 2 years old, 22 years old, 92 years old. Whenever it happens, now you've got the leaky gut. Now the macromolecules get into the bloodstream. Now the systemic inflammation starts, meaning inflammation throughout your entire body, pulling on the chain. And wherever your weak link is, the weak link's determined by all those molecules of the bacteria in your gut going through your system, turning the dimmers up or down. Wherever the weak link is, that's where you're going to develop the symptoms.
And it's so interesting because I also work with osteoporosis. And I can't even tell you how many people that I've seen when they stopped the gluten, not only did their bone dent, and that's the only thing they did, not only did their bone density a year later significantly increase, the arthritis decreased. There's a lot of patients that I've worked with that the gluten caused inflammation, as you said, so it went to their bones. My husband, it went to his chest. And people can have all sorts of crazy symptoms that they're not relating to this. And oh, it can't be because of gluten. So it's such, all the work you've done is just so important. So can we talk about why your product works so well?
Sure.
Okay, so let's talk about the colostrum, because the fact that 2 months of getting sick didn't happen because of your protocol is really amazing. I just couldn't get over that there was things to be done that I hadn't seen or I hadn't heard about at the time. And they worked. So tell us about this colostrum.
Sure, you bet. Every newborn baby, every one of them, has pretty severe intestinal permeability, leaky gut, because when they're in the womb, all the nutrients are circulating inside mom. It's in the amniotic fluid, it's in their eyes and their nose and their mouth, the umbilical cord. There are no boundaries inside the womb for that. The circulation is bringing in nutrients, taking out the waste, and it's occurring throughout the body. When baby's born, baby has severe intestinal permeability. That's normal. But the first 3 to 5 days of baby's food is not breast milk, it's colostrum. Very different. Colostrum is full of bacteria, but it's the bacteria that comes in and it goes down and says, okay, genes, time to turn you on. Let's get that dimmer switch turned up. Let's close those tight junctions between the cells in the gut. Let's close that leaky gut. You can't be leaky anymore, because pretty soon more food's coming down that we've got to digest it before it gets into the bloodstream. And colostrum turns the genes on to heal intestinal, it's not even healing, it's just to close intestinal permeability. And it turns the genes on to build the colonies of the good bacteria in your gut. And it turns the genes on to produce the bacteria that's going to fight the bad bacteria, so you don't get inflammation in your gut. There are many products and with good science that can help to heal intestinal permeability, like glutamine and vitamin D and fish oils, curcumin, lots of good science on all of that, but they're all one-note players. Colostrum plays the entire symphony. It's Mother Nature's way of healing the gut. And colostrum benefits the entire body. It doesn't just work with the gut, but we're talking about the gut here. When you heal intestinal permeability by taking colostrum, all of the messengers in colostrum also heal leaky brain, because the brain is very permeable at birth also. And this particular colostrum, my friend, Dr. Andrew Keach, started the company for this. He was born and raised on a dairy farm in New Zealand. You don't argue with dairy farmers. They're like just meat and bones kind of guys. It's yes or no. There's the black and white. It works or it doesn't, right? And he learned very early in life, you've got to give those newborn calves colostrum or they die. You can't give them milk. And then he learned that when the farmers got sick, or the farmers' families, they all drank colostrum and they got better. It didn't matter what they had, they got better. So Andrew wanted to make the best colostrum in the world and carry the message out to the world, and he did. His colostrum, only grass-fed cows, no antibiotics, no growth hormones, Every batch is tested for 43 different contaminants in it, every batch, every time. His colostrum, this GS Immune Restore, is so good and so pure. 3 countries that I know of in Africa license it as the treatment of choice for HIV.
Oh
If
my.
somebody's diagnosed with HIV, the government gives them colostrum right away. That's how good this product is. So in my world, I take a little colostrum every day in my smoothie. I'm not saying everybody should do that because some people have a dairy sensitivity and they should not. But even if you have a dairy sensitivity, when people say, and I recommend the colostrum and they say, well, doc, but I don't do well with dairy. I say, it's great. Great. We just found that out for you. You got a dairy sensitivity. Get the milk out of there, get the cheese out of there, the sour cream, the yogurt, get it all out of there. But Mrs. Patient, I'm going to recommend you take colostrum for 2 months. As long as you don't have any symptoms, as long as you feel good when you're taking it. I mean, you get bloated or gassy or a little crampy, just stop right away. But as long as you don't feel bad at all, take it for a couple months because nothing turns on so many genes to create a healthy environment in your gut the way that colostrum does. So get all the other dairy out of there, take this for 2 months and then stop. But we'll have jump-started you so well in healing your gut and building a healthy gut environment.
Wow. I mean, we use it as an emergency, but it sounds like there's so many more uses for this. That's incredible.
My friend, Dr. Keach, he takes an 8-ounce glass of the powder every day. The guy's built like a Sherman tank, right? But his kids are now probably, let's see, they're probably 7 and 9, somewhere around there. And he's so proud to say, Tom, my kids have never needed an antibiotic in their life, ever. Kids get sick in school. My kids don't get sick. He gives them colostrum every day. And he recognizes dairy sensitivities are important for people and all of that. But if you don't have any symptoms, you take the colostrum. And so that's what my wife and I do.
So what would you say if someone wants to take this daily? How much would you recommend?
Oh, for an adult, a scoop. There's a scoop in the container.
Yeah.
For it's not about a lot of volume. It's just the consistency. Just keep turning the genes on. Healthy genes, healthy gut, less inflamed gut. Close those tight junctions. Build more of the good bacteria. Fight the bad bacteria. So just a little bit. It's the consistency that makes the difference.
Wow. Because I know that, to me, it was just amazing. It was a miracle that he didn't get 2 months, that he absolutely was able to nip it. So yay. So thank you for making this. And then the other product that I have to tell you, so we don't go to a restaurant. We do not eat out without taking this,
Right.
because it's sort of like our safeguard, because you do not know. You don't know if they put, sometimes there's water that's used for pasta. You can't guarantee, as much as they tell you, when someone is that sensitive, as my husband is to gluten and gets so sick from it, when they tell you, oh yes, it's gluten-free, but you don't know who touched what. So tell us exactly, because I know that it works, it's between 60 and 90 minutes, which is amazing and so different than so many of the other products. So why don't you fill us in on why you decided to make this? And I know you really work very hard on this. So let's talk about
Yes,
this.
we
It
do.
used to be called, why did you change the name? We always called it Glutenza.
Yeah, I kind of like the name Glutenza, but my team said, Doc, we should have our own name, for the product compared to what other doctors are using. But, okay, I don't pay much attention to that,
And I don't care
listen.
the name either. I just know it because we've been using it so much.
Yeah. So in the American Journal of Gastroenterology, March of 2019, so last year, an article was published by Peter Green and Ben Liebwall at Columbia University, very famous gastroenterologists in the world of celiac disease. And they published an article and they sent 804 volunteers out into gluten-free restaurants with testing equipment. And they ordered from the gluten-free menus. And when the waiter or waitress walked away, they pulled out their testing equipment, put it on the table. When the waiter or waitress brought the food, and they saw it and they looked at all this, but they put the food down. They immediately took the food and put it in the testing equipment. Is there any gluten in this gluten-free food? And what they discovered, looking at 5,624 items on gluten-free menus, do you think that's a good test? Of course it
Yes,
is.
yes.
804 different volunteers tested 5,624 gluten-free foods. 32% of everything on a gluten-free menu is not gluten-free. It's contaminated. 32%. Gluten-free pasta. 51% of gluten-free pasta is not gluten-free at the table. 54% of gluten-free pizza is not gluten-free. This is like, what?
You
What?
know, it's funny, before you go on, those are the two things my husband will not order out because he's had issues with
Yeah,
gluten-free pizza and gluten-free pasta, no matter what. He doesn't trust it, but I didn't know that study. That's unbelievable. Oh my
it
goodness.
is. It is. And this is from the Celiac Center at Columbia. This is a world famous center that published this. And I looked at that and I said, what? My God, because my wife and I, we love gluten-free pizza. We'll do it once every few months. You know, we live in northern Italy most of the time.
Oh, wow.
And so we love the pizza there. And they make gluten-free pizza. It's really good. But it's contaminated. So much is contaminated. So we take, like you do, we take our E3 before every meal. Anytime we're eating anything that my wife is not cooking, I mean, if you get carry out, E3. If you're in a restaurant, you take it before you start with appetizers. Why? Because it will digest 99% of any inadvertent exposures to gluten. 99%. And within 60 to 90 minutes, as you said. And why is that important? Because Professor Fasano at Harvard has shown us the way you get leaky gut when you're exposed to wheat. Remember, he said all gluten exposure creates leaky gut every time. Within 5 minutes of gluten or other components of wheat coming out of the stomach into the small intestine, you've got leaky gut. And I showed the videos of it happening because they put cameras down in the stomach and into the intestine, and you see it happen. You go, my God, look at this. Wow, that's very cool to see it. Within 5 minutes of wheat getting into the small intestine. Why? You've got the same body as your ancestors thousands of years ago, the same kidneys, the same eyeballs, they work the same. Everything's the same immune system. What did our ancestors' immune systems have to protect them from? Bugs, parasites, viruses, mold, fungus, and bacteria. That was it. There was nothing else. There was no red dye number 42, no polyethylene glycol, no benzene, no persistent organic pollutants, none of this stuff for our ancestors. So our immune systems today are designed to protect us from bugs, parasites, viruses, mold, fungus, and bacteria. That's it. What Professor Fasano has shown us, when wheat comes out of the stomach, the sentries standing guard right there. Because when our ancestors went shopping, or not shopping, when they would search for food, when they'd find food, they'd pick something up. First they smell it, then they little taste of it, then they eat it. If they're exposed to bacteria, they can't smell it, they can't taste it. And if the bacteria is not killed in the stomach by the acid in the stomach, and the bacteria comes into the first part of the small intestine, the sentries standing guard there, looking for bacteria, are called toll-like receptor 4. So if toll-like receptor 4 gets activated within 5 minutes, here comes all the inflammation and here comes the leaky gut within 5 minutes to protect us from bad bacteria. And Professor Fasano has shown us, this paper he published in January identified it, that the body misinterprets gluten as a pathogenic bacteria. Every time you eat it, your body, that's why I said tears a cheesecloth. And I've got 5 studies tearing the cheesecloth. This is why. It's because wheat activates the toll-like receptor 4 in the first part of the small intestine, the sentry standing guard, that thinks you just got exposed to a dangerous bacteria. we need inflammation here to kill this bacteria now. That's why every human, every time, because the body misinterprets wheat as a bacteria. That's why it happens. And
Uh,
E3 destroys any inadvertent exposures to gluten within 60 to 90 minutes before it comes out of the stomach into the first part of the small intestine. There are many different digestive enzymes out there for wheat. There are many, but show me the studies, how quickly they work. Most of them takes 3 to 6 hours to work. And they'll work and they'll protect your large intestine. So if you've got ulcerative colitis, those enzymes will stop the inflammation in the large intestine, but they don't stop the systemic inflammation in the first part of the small intestine. That's why E3 helped your husband so much.
Oh, it's just, we do the exact same thing. As I said, I have this little carrying case, comes with us everywhere. We have 13, it fits actually. We keep it, and whenever we go out, it's just, it's so easy, and it's just preventative. And truly, it's been 7 years. It's been, yeah, since it first happened. And other than sometimes he's had these exposures, but really hasn't had, once we got onto your whole protocol and everything, he's really able to, it doesn't stop. You know, he doesn't have the issues. He doesn't have the inflammation. So it's really, really quite amazing. And that's what I'm saying. As I said, part of happiness is gratitude. And I'm from the bottom of my heart grateful to you, because this wasn't easy. You did tremendous research way back when nobody was doing it. You know, you sought out leaders in the field to bring this wealth of knowledge together. And it's,
in Denmark, and in Germany, and in Georgia, and in Maine, that we took these scientists that all had written different papers about some small piece of what can help break down wheat, and we put it all together. Took 2 years to come up with E3 Advanced Plus, but it works.
It's brilliant. And for people listening, this could be what changes your life. I mean, that's the thing. That's what I've seen in my practice. Besides increasing happiness, it's going to improve health and so many things. You know, a lot of people I see as they get older just think they have to live with things. Oh, that's just the way it is. The brain fog, the joint pain, wherever it's going, wherever their weak link, as you say, is. But it doesn't have to be. And that's why I wanted you on, because I want people, this is, you know, we're talking about happiness, and your health is totally related to your happiness. And this is such a key component to your health. So I can't, and we could go on for hours. You are such a wealth of information. I love always talking to you because I learn new studies. I learn so much. But any last minute things, you know, we really talked about the connection between the gut and happiness and health. Is there any last things that you want to leave everybody with?
Yes. You know, being happier in life comes from being more at peace, I think. That's an important component. And you can't be at peace when your body's in chaos. When you have activated inflammation, I mean, inflammation is good for us. We wouldn't be here without it. But when you have excessive inflammation because you keep throwing gasoline on the fire, it's really hard to have a body that's functioning well. It's really difficult. And 1986, a MD microbiologist in Australia writes a paper, and he says, you know, I think that sometimes ulcers are caused by a bacteria. He was a gastroenterologist and a microbiologist. And people said, what are you, a nutcase? Everybody knows that ulcers are caused by too much acid, and you have to take antacids for that. Everybody knows that. And of course, antacids have been one of the top 10 medications every year for 25 years. Billions of dollars a year people waste their money, in my opinion, on antacids, taking them long-term. Short-term, great, not long-term. So what did this guy do? He put a tube down his throat, down past his stomach, into the small intestine, into the stomach, took pictures of the inside of the stomach, the healthy pink tissue of his stomach. Then he drank a beaker of bacteria called Heliobacter pylori, a whole beaker of it. Waited 3 days until he was as sick as could be. Put another tube down, took pictures of the ulcers beginning to develop in his stomach. Then he took the antibiotics to kill that bad bacteria, Helicobacter pylori. Waited a week until he was feeling better, took another picture of the healthy pink tissue and healing ulcers of his stomach. Then he published it with the pictures. Then everybody knew he was a nutcase. But he proved that sometimes ulcers are caused by a bacteria. The World Health Organization thought this was so important, they sent the paper to every medical society in the world, because at the time, stomach cancer was the #1 cancer in the world, killing people. And stomach cancer most often is caused by a Helicobacter infection. And the World Health Organization thought, if doctors understand that heartburn, dyspepsia could be an early sign of a Helicobacter infection and they test for it, we can reduce the number of stomach cancers in the world. So everyone thought he was a nut. He didn't care. He didn't care. 21 years later, the guy wins the Nobel Prize in physiology. And this is what the Nobel Committee said. This is the exact quote. This is Dr. Barry Marshall, who, with tenacity and a prepared mind, challenged prevailing dogma. So you want happiness in life? You need to challenge the dogma by which you've lived life to this point. The assumptions we have of, oh, this is how it is, all those assumptions, we need to challenge how we're looking at the world. How do you do that? By tenacity. And what does that mean? In my second book, the subtitle is Just 1 Hour a Week to the Best Memory, Productivity, and Sleep You've Ever had. And what you do in 1 hour, there it is, thank you. Yes.
I love these books.
1 hour, just every Tuesday night after dinner, every Sunday morning after services, whenever it is, but every week at the same time, you allocate 1 hour to learn one more concept of how to help protect you and your family to be healthier. That's tenacity every single week, without exception. And prepare your mind by listening to these interviews again and again and again, reading the books again and again. That's preparing your mind to challenge the dogma by which you've lived life to this point that's got you the results you currently have. So when I sign books, it's always the same. Base hits win the ball game, right? You want those little baby steps, 1 hour a week. And when you do that consistently, in 6 months, you've got this. You've got this down. And you've transitioned your life and your family's life, and you're much healthier and much happier.
I love it. And you're one of those people, maybe you'll win the Nobel Prize because you really challenged the dogma as well. And you kept doing it and persisting. And now, look, it's very well, a lot of it is now very well accepted. It's not like it was by any means. And you're teaching practitioners all over. So thank you so much for the work you're doing. And thank you from the bottom of my heart again, how you've changed my family's life and my husband's healthy, really because of your work. So thank you so much. And this has really been a pleasure. I just always love speaking with you. And thank you for sharing all this great knowledge. And I'll have all the links for everybody with all his information below the interview. So thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this interview, and now you see why I'm such a fan of Dr. Tom's. Listen to this information carefully because there's so many things that can have a huge impact on your bones, your overall health, happiness, and really change your life. All the links to the products Dr. Tom talked about will be in the show notes. So bye for now, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.